Hey guys, I'm Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. Now today I wanted to bring you something a little bit shorter than what my usual episodes are. I have been really interested in following John Moxley now that he's back on that independent scene, signed with AEW, and last week he had his debut match back in NJPW against Juice Robinson, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So, what happened? How good was it? Stick around if you want to find out as I go through John Moxley versus Juice Robinson and see how it all panned out. Now, I've got a feeling that my opinion won't be particularly popular when it comes to this match because I didn't really enjoy it that much. Now, I'm not particularly familiar with NJPW. I've heard of Juice Robinson. His name is one of those names that's sort of appeared on my radar, and I was really excited to actually get a little bit of exposure to him. I didn't want to sit through the whole Best of the Super Junior finals just because I have so little knowledge of it. I feel like it's something quite hard to jump onto, especially with the length of the shows. But I really wanted to try my best to follow Moxley now that he's back as Moxley. So let's get to the actual match. Moxley versus Juice Robinson. The story of the match, in my opinion, was fine. It was actually quite well told, quite defined, and fairly simple. In the early moments of the match, the commentators put over the fact that both of the men trained in FCW, the precursor to NXT, and sort of hinted at time spent in NXT and WWE in general, hinting at the fact that they had both not been happy there and had to come back out onto the independent scene to reinvent themselves. And that was a really nice touch. Made me. I didn't know that Juice Robinson and Moxley trained together back then, so that was a welcome bit of information. And it was actually. It was something that gave me hope in those early moments. I was like, oh, that's a nice call. This might actually go fairly well. But the first indication that it wasn't going to go well for me was in those early opening moments of the match as Robinson and Moxley went at each other hard. You could hear their feet moving in the ring so fast. That was fairly entertaining to me. And the commentators put over that they were going after each other hard, throwing big punches, and Robinson ended up going out of the ring. They then just, the commentary then just called, "Oh, Moxley's going for a fly!" And he clears our announce table, goes right over our heads. And one of the things that I've said in other podcasts is when it comes to top rope moves, to outside dives, I'd still like to know what the move is. Doesn't matter that they're just throwing themselves over the top rope. I want to know what the move is because it gives me a stronger mental image of what is going on at the time. It was fairly clear what was going on after that for a little bit as they fought out into the crowd, into the entranceway. All of that was fairly easy to follow, and I did think that there was some nice detail in the commentary, especially from what hand they were striking with, where they were going for. It was fairly obvious throughout the match that Moxley was really attempting to bust open the left eye of Robinson, going after him with the punches, biting it at one point. Just really trying to draw blood from Juice Robinson, and that was the story of the match, really. It was Moxley arriving back on the scene, being uncaged and unleashed and after blood, and Juice Robinson trying to just sort of weather the oncoming storm. He got some really nice spots in the match, but there was a lot of places that they let me down with it. At one point, after they'd fought out into the crowd for a little bit, Juice Robinson climbed something. They never said what he was climbing. He then threw himself off said something and had some sort of nasty landing that took out Moxley and himself. But they didn't say what move or what he did when he threw himself. It was just a reaction of "oh, I can't believe what he's doing" type thing. And I was starting to get frustrated by that point, because I'd noticed a few of these things, and typically if this sort of thing happens earlier on in a match, then it definitely will happen later on. There was a spot with Moxley where he performed some sort of move. Again, all we got was reaction. It was, "oh, all the way round, Moxley hasn't done it yet." And I was getting frustrated with it. They were like, "all the way round, he hasn't quite done it yet. Let's take a look at the replay. Oh yeah, the full rotation and the release. The crowd made such an awkward noise when he landed like that," and it just sort of robs the drama of the moment. Same sort of thing again later on when Robinson tried to put Moxley through the table and the table didn't break. They did not say what move Robinson was performing to try and put Moxley through the table. Now, granted, it might not be the most important thing, because really the more important spot is then the fact that that Robinson shouts, "I'm going to break this motherfucker," and gets Moxley up in a powerbomb and puts him through the table. Now, while we're talking about that, let's talk about some of the things that I did like about this match. I really liked that Juice Robinson was just he was employing a never say die sort of attitude. He was really trying to up his aggression and go after Moxley. He tried to hit a cannonball on the entranceway at some point that Moxley avoided, and he hit his lower back on the barricade, which led to a few spots where Moxley was trying to work the back. He employed a half crab at some point. He got the figure four around the post at some point. Those were all pretty nice spots, and as well as the attempted suplex through the table. There was a few things that I really did like about this match, but one of the things that bothered me was, why give option of the match for the minutiae of the match, but when you've got these big high spots that you're supposed to remember afterwards, that are supposed to be the exhilarating part of the match, you can't not call those. Like that thing with the Ambrose one where it was the full rotation and he hasn't quite done it yet. Oh, the full release. It was just, with the way that the commentary was trying to sell it, it was clear that it was supposed to be one of the highlight moments of the match, but they just didn't call it properly. And it's hard to invest in a match in the quieter moments, in the slower moments, when you know that once it gets more chaotic or there's a big spot, they're probably not going to call it properly. I was actually really, really surprised, because I'd heard some really good things about New Japan commentary. So going in, I was really looking forward to it, and I was just sort of surprised by how reactionary it was, and to a point, the fact that it was just stupid that they were going into the minutiae of he's going after his left eye, and he's using this hand, and you get really nice calls, like when Robinson is going for the Pulp Fiction and Moxley manages to sidestep and goes for that double arm DDT, but Robinson counters away from it again, and stuff like that. I really like those sorts of calls, because it's really easy to imagine what's going on, and it adds to the drama. But it does, the drama is less when you know that as soon as that sequence is over and someone hits a big move, that they're probably not going to say what it is. I was just surprised more than anything that I didn't end up enjoying this match, because I guess I did. There were times that I genuinely enjoyed it, but the times where it was frustrating me also took away from those times. Who cares, in my opinion, if they're locking in, a Boston Crab or a Cloverleaf, or whether they're punching with their right hand, if you're not going to tell me what they're doing when they're throwing themselves off of something high, or performing some sort of high impact move that you're supposed to remember after the match. It's just frustrating. So those quiet moments felt like they were much worse, and between the spots where they were letting me down, the bits where they were calling it nice, I was just waiting for the next thing, like when are they gonna not say. My only other real problem with the match is that they had Robinson kick out of the double arm DDT. Now, I like that they teased it quite a bit throughout the match. I was about to call him Ambrose then. Moxley was looking for it quite a bit throughout the match. They teased it multiple times, and when he hit it, because of the teases, I just sort of assumed that it would be over, and I'd really like to see that move put over as being a really strong move. And the fact that basically the first time that he's hit it since he's left WWE, it got kicked out of, and it took 2 to put Robinson down. It just felt a little bit disappointing to me, because I guess I see why they did it, because it's supposed to make Juice look good because of how resilient he is and how strong, but I also just felt like it made the double arm DDT not feel quite as special. So all in all then, this match was just sort of a tale of two sides, really, because I'm sure that if I had been able to see that this match would have been absolutely fine. In fact, I'm sure that it would have gone, like a 5 out of 6 match type deal. But as it was for me, it was a really, really low 4 out of 6, because I just couldn't get into it with those big ball dropping moments. Maybe I was expecting too much because of what people had said, but when I ask people about New Japan commentary, they always say, oh, it's so much better than the main roster, it's a hell of a lot better than the shit that we get on Raw and SmackDown. And quite frankly, this was not any better than a Raw or SmackDown match type calling. Yeah, okay, they might not have used buzzwords, or they might not have had Vince shouting in their ears and feeding them lines, but in the big, dramatic, important moments, they did not do their job. And it's like having a film that has audio description that tells you when someone looks in a certain way. Like, she looks over to the right side of the room, looking at the picture that's 2/3 up the wall, and then when there's a car crash and someone's head comes off, they don't tell you then. Like, the audio description just says nothing. And that's essentially what commentary is to someone like me. It's audio description, and their job is to put over in audio form what happens in the matches. And in my opinion, with those big dramatic moments, if you're not calling to tell me what's going on, then I just can't enjoy the match. So a little bit of a disappointing start for Moxley for me on the independent scene. I'm looking forward to seeing another one of his matches to see if it's any better next time. I will check out New Japan again at some point. I won't let this completely put me off, but it definitely put me off watching something like Shingo Ospreay in the actual Best of the Super Junior finals, because I know that match is probably really crazy and has some big spots in it, and if they can't even call the big spots in this match, then how am I supposed to expect them to call the big crazy spots in a match with two people that I really don't know and haven't seen anything from before? So it definitely put me off somewhat, but I will go back, and it was a slightly disappointing start to Moxie's run for me. But feel free to let me know what you thought of the match down in the comments down below, or if you want to tell me I'm wrong about how good the match was, feel free to do that too. But yeah, it was an interesting experience watching it, because I was expecting to really, really like it, and then it was just sort of, it just didn't connect with me, and that is unfortunate. So John Moxley versus Juice Robinson only gets a low 4 out of 6 from Wrestling in the Dark. If you've liked what you've heard here and you want to hear more about wrestling from a blind fan's perspective, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell, and never miss another episode of WITD. Right guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.